8 Stoic strategies for controlling your anger. 1. Understand that you can't control everything. The first step is to acknowledge that we cannot control everything around us. Life is full of situations beyond our control, and sometimes things will happen that upset us. But here's the key. We do have control over how we respond. When we recognize that we can't control the actions of others or the unexpected challenges life throws at us, we free ourselves from unnecessary frustration. Instead of reacting with anger, we can respond with calmness and clarity. 2. Pause and breathe. When anger strikes, our first reaction is often to lash out. But the Stoics remind us that taking a moment to pause and breathe can prevent a lot of regret. Before reacting impulsively, step back and take a deep breath. This simple action gives us time to reflect, regain composure, and choose a better response. Remember, nothing in life is worth losing your peace of mind over. 3. Reflect on the bigger picture. Anger often blinds us to the bigger picture. In those moments of frustration, it's easy to focus only on the small, immediate trigger. The Stoics teach us to take a step back and think about the larger context. Will this matter in a week, a month, a year? By focusing on the bigger picture, we can see that many things that anger us are actually small in the grand scheme of life. 4. Practice empathy. Anger often comes from misunderstanding others or focusing on their mistakes. A Stoic strategy is to practice empathy, or the ability to understand where others are coming from. Before getting angry, ask yourself, what might be causing the other person to act this way? Are they having a tough day? Could there be something deeper at play? Practicing empathy allows us to view the situation from their perspective, which can help us respond with kindness rather than anger. 5. Focus on what you can control. A key Stoic principle is to focus on what is in our control and let go of the rest. We can't control how others act, but we can control how we respond. By focusing on our actions, words, and thoughts, we can maintain our inner peace. This shift in focus allows us to regain our sense of power and prevents us from being swept away by external circumstances. 6. Reframe your thoughts. The Stoics were masters at reframing their thoughts. Instead of viewing a challenging situation as something that makes us angry, we can choose to see it as an opportunity for growth. For example, when someone cuts us off in traffic, we could see it as an injustice that deserves our anger. Or we could reframe it. This is a chance to practice patience and maintain my calm. By shifting how we interpret events, we take away their power to anger us. 7. Keep a journal. Writing down your thoughts and feelings is a powerful tool for understanding and controlling anger. The Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius, kept journals to reflect on their emotions, thoughts, and actions. Journaling gives you space to process your anger and discover the root causes. You can look back and identify patterns, so you can learn to respond differently in the future. It's a way of gaining self-awareness and understanding the triggers of your anger. 8. Let go of expectations. Finally, one of the most powerful Stoic strategies for managing anger is to let go of expectations. When we expect people to behave in certain ways or life to go according to our plans, we set ourselves up for frustration. The Stoics remind us that the world does not owe us anything, and the more we cling to expectations, the more likely we are to feel disappointed. By accepting things as they are, we reduce the chance of getting angry when reality doesn't meet our hopes. In conclusion, anger is a natural emotion, but it doesn't have to control us. With the wisdom of the Stoics, we can learn to control our anger before it controls us. These 8 strategies, understanding what we can control, pausing to breathe, seeing the bigger picture, practicing empathy, focusing on our response, reframing our thoughts, journaling, and letting go of expectations, offer a pathway to inner peace and emotional freedom. The next time you feel that surge of anger rising within you, remember that you have the power to choose a different path. Take a moment to pause, reflect, and apply these Stoic strategies. You will find that with practice, the storms of anger can be weathered with calm and wisdom. The power of perspective. One of the greatest teachings of Stoicism is the understanding that our emotions, especially anger, are often a result of our perceptions. It's not the external events that cause us to be angry, but our interpretation of those events. A person's rudeness, a missed opportunity, or an unforeseen setback can spark anger, but only if we allow ourselves to see them as injustices. By changing our perspective, we can transform how we feel. For instance, if someone cuts us off in traffic, we could choose to see them as inconsiderate, or we could choose to see them as someone who's possibly in a hurry, facing challenges we know nothing about. The first reaction might fuel anger, but the second invites empathy and understanding. This shift in thinking can drastically reduce the emotional charge of the situation and bring us peace instead. Embrace the practice of self-discipline. The Stoics believe that true freedom comes from self-discipline. In the context of anger, this means having control over our impulses. It's easy to lash out when anger rises, but true strength lies in holding ourselves back and choosing not to react immediately. Self-discipline allows us to build mental resilience. Instead of letting anger overpower us, we can train our minds to pause, assess the situation, and make a conscious decision. Over time, with enough practice, we become less reactive and more thoughtful in how we respond to life's challenges. Anger as a teaching moment. Rather than viewing anger as something negative, the Stoics encourage us to see it as a teacher. Anger often arises from unmet expectations or a sense of injustice, but these feelings can be clues to our values and desires. When anger comes, take a moment to ask, what does this teach me about myself? Why am I angry? Is there an unmet need or a boundary that's been crossed? By examining the roots of our anger, we uncover deeper truths about our desires, values, and priorities. This self-awareness can help guide our actions and prevent unnecessary frustration in the future. Practice gratitude. Finally, one of the most transformative Stoic practices is gratitude. When we focus on what's wrong, we feed the fire of anger. But when we intentionally direct our attention to what's going right, we dilute the power of negative emotions. Gratitude shifts our focus from what's frustrating us to what's bringing us joy, peace, and fulfillment. It helps us appreciate the small, positive moments in our lives that often go unnoticed. And in doing so, it reduces the likelihood of anger taking hold in the first place. Gratitude reminds us that, even in the face of challenges, we always have something to be thankful for. A word on Stoicism and anger. Remember, the Stoics were not perfect. They, too, experienced anger. But what set them apart was their relentless commitment to improving their responses. It wasn't about avoiding anger altogether. It was about recognizing it, understanding it, and ultimately choosing not to be ruled by it. In the end, the Stoic approach to anger is not about suppression or denial. It's about understanding that we have the power to control our reactions, even when we cannot control the world around us. And that power brings us the freedom to live more peaceful, fulfilling lives. So, as you go about your day, remember these Stoic strategies. The next time anger arises, take a deep breath, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with your values and brings you peace. With time and practice, you'll find that anger becomes less of a burden and more of an opportunity for growth. Transform anger into action. One of the most profound aspects of Stoic philosophy is the ability to transform negative emotions into productive actions. Instead of allowing anger to lead us into destructive behavior, the Stoics encourage us to channel that energy into something constructive. When we feel the heat of anger rising, we can take that intensity and turn it into focused action. For example, if we are angry about a project not going well, rather than lashing out at others or giving into frustration, we can redirect that energy into solving the problem. Anger can be a powerful motivator, but it is only truly effective when we use it as fuel for positive change. The role of patience in anger management. Patience is a cornerstone of Stoicism, and it plays a crucial role in managing anger. The Stoics knew that patience doesn't mean passivity. It means choosing to remain calm in the face of difficulty. Life will inevitably present us with situations that test our patience, and the ability to remain composed in these moments is a key Stoic practice. When faced with frustration, remind yourself that impatience often fuels anger. By practicing patience, we give ourselves the space to respond thoughtfully rather than reacting emotionally. Patience teaches us that we don't need immediate answers or resolutions. Sometimes, waiting for the right moment or for more information can lead to better, more peaceful outcomes. Don't take things personally. Another profound Stoic insight is that much of our anger comes from taking things personally. When someone cuts us off in traffic, criticizes our work, or speaks harshly to us, it's easy to feel attacked or disrespected. But the Stoics remind us that people act based on their own circumstances, perceptions, and struggles. Their actions are not necessarily a reflection of us. By reminding ourselves that other people's behavior is not a direct attack on our character, we free ourselves from unnecessary anger. It allows us to separate our sense of self-worth from the actions of others, and this detachment helps us maintain emotional stability. Understanding the nature of control and the dichotomy of control. A key Stoic concept is the dichotomy of control. The idea that there are things we can control and things we cannot. Much of the anger we experience comes from frustration over things we cannot control. We cannot control other people's actions, the outcome of certain events, or even the way the world unfolds. But we can control how we respond to these situations. By focusing on our own actions and thoughts, we regain our sense of control and take back our peace. Remember that when we spend too much energy trying to control the uncontrollable, we open the door to anger, frustration, and anxiety. The Stoics teach us to focus on what's within our power and let go of the rest. The importance of preparation and mindfulness. The Stoics were known for their practice of premeditation malorum, or the premeditation of evils. This practice involves imagining possible challenges and obstacles before they arise. By mentally preparing ourselves for difficult situations, we can reduce the shock or emotional reaction when things go wrong. Similarly, mindfulness can help us recognize our emotional triggers before they escalate into anger. By being aware of our thoughts and feelings in the moment, we can practice self-awareness and catch ourselves before we react. This mindfulness helps us pause, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with our values rather than giving in to impulsive emotions. Building emotional resilience. The Stoics emphasize building emotional resilience, an ability to bounce back from setbacks without losing our peace of mind. Life is unpredictable, and we are bound to face challenges that test our patience and composure. But it's in these moments that we have the greatest opportunity to practice Stoic principles. Emotional resilience isn't about avoiding negative emotions, but rather about learning how to recover from them quickly. It's about not allowing setbacks or frustrations to derail our entire day or mindset. When we build resilience, we become less susceptible to anger because we know that no temporary inconvenience has the power to shake us. Live by nature. The Stoics taught that we should live by nature, that is, in harmony with the world around us and with the natural rhythms of life. Anger often arises when we fight against the way things are, wishing that circumstances or people were different. But the Stoics remind us that life, by its very nature, is unpredictable, and resisting this unpredictability only creates frustration. By accepting life as it is, imperfect, and often outside of our control, we can find peace. When we embrace the flow of life and stop fighting against it, we remove one of the key sources of anger. Instead of becoming upset when things don't go our way, we can accept them, adapt, and move forward with equanimity. Final thoughts. The pursuit of tranquility. Ultimately, the Stoic approach to anger is about the pursuit of tranquility, an inner calm that remains undisturbed by external events. This tranquility comes from the understanding that our peace of mind is not dependent on the actions of others or the circumstances around us, but on how we choose to respond. By practicing the strategies outlined in this letter, you can begin to control your anger and cultivate a more peaceful, fulfilled life. Remember, anger is a natural emotion, but it doesn't have to dominate our lives. Through self-awareness, practice, and patience, we can transform our responses to challenges and live in alignment with our highest values. Embrace the wisdom of acceptance. In our modern world, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by expectations, whether those expectations are set by society, our families, or ourselves. Stoicism teaches us the power of acceptance, embracing life as it is, rather than wishing it were different. When we encounter moments that provoke anger, it often comes from our resistance to the way things are. Perhaps someone disrespects us, or something doesn't go according to plan. But the Stoics encourage us to see these events as part of life's natural course. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity. It means acknowledging that life is full of fluctuations, and it's how we respond to these fluctuations that define our peace. When we accept that things won't always go our way, we stop expecting life to conform to our desires. This shift in mindset allows us to handle frustration with greater ease and prevent anger from clouding our judgment. Take ownership of your emotions. A common belief is that we can't help our emotions, that they are simply reactions to external events. But the Stoics disagree. They believe that emotions, including anger, are not caused by external events, but by our own judgments and perceptions of those events. In other words, it's not the traffic jam or the rude comment that makes us angry. It's our interpretation of those events that spark the emotion. Taking ownership of our emotions means accepting full responsibility for how we feel. This empowers us to make conscious choices in how we react. Instead of blaming others or circumstances for our anger, we recognize that we hold the key to how we process our emotions. By owning our feelings, we regain control over them, reducing the likelihood of being swept away by impulsive reactions. Strengthen your relationships with empathy. Anger often arises in relationships, whether with family, friends, or colleagues, when we feel misunderstood or wronged. However, Stoicism teaches that one of the most effective ways to prevent anger in relationships is to cultivate empathy. When we make an effort to understand others' perspectives and consider the reasons behind their actions, we often find that the source of our anger is not as great as it first appeared. For example, if a loved one speaks harshly to us, rather than reacting with anger, we could pause and ask ourselves, what might they be going through? What could be causing this behavior? This shift from judgment to empathy changes the entire dynamic of the interaction. It helps us see that others are acting from their own set of experiences, which may not align with our own, but they are still deserving of compassion. By strengthening our relationships with empathy, we create an environment of mutual respect, reducing the likelihood of anger-driven conflict. Be aware of the ripple effect. When we allow anger to dictate our actions, its effects extend far beyond ourselves. Our words and actions, fueled by anger, can cause harm to others, whether it's a hurtful remark, a rash decision, or a damaged relationship. The Stoics remind us that every action has consequences, and we are responsible for the ripple effect that our emotions create. Imagine that you're in a heated discussion with someone, and your anger leads to harsh words. Not only are you likely to regret those words later, but they may also hurt the other person, leading to more tension and conflict. Conversely, by choosing to respond with calmness and understanding, you create a ripple effect of peace and harmony. In this way, we learn that controlling our anger not only benefits us but also those around us, creating a more peaceful world one interaction at a time. Shift your focus from judgment to understanding. The Stoics suggest that much of our anger comes from our tendency to judge situations, people, and outcomes too harshly. In our minds, we label things as right or wrong, good or bad, but this binary thinking only serves to fuel our emotions. Instead, Stoicism encourages us to shift our focus from judgment to understanding. When something goes wrong or frustrates us, rather than immediately labeling it as unfair or unjust, we can ask ourselves, what is the situation teaching me? What can I learn from it? By adopting a mindset of curiosity and understanding, we step away from the emotional charge of judgment and move toward constructive thinking. This mental shift allows us to process challenges with greater calm and equanimity. The practice of daily reflection. Stoicism emphasizes the practice of daily reflection, a time to examine our thoughts, actions, and reactions. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, used journaling as a way to reflect on their day and assess how they responded to situations. This practice of self-examination helps us identify patterns in our behavior and allows us to adjust our reactions. By setting aside a few minutes each day to reflect on how we handled our emotions, we gain insight into our triggers and responses. Over time, we can track our progress and see how we become more adept at managing our anger. Regular reflection also helps us identify areas for growth, allowing us to become more mindful and intentional in our emotional responses. The role of gratitude in overcoming anger. Finally, let's revisit the power of gratitude. When we practice gratitude, we shift our focus from what's wrong in our lives to what's right. This simple change in perspective can dramatically reduce the frequency and intensity of anger. It reminds us that even when things aren't going our way, we still have many things to be thankful for. Consider keeping a gratitude journal, where you write down at least 3 things you're grateful for each day. This practice helps train your mind to focus on the positive, which in turn can diminish feelings of frustration or anger. Gratitude helps us see life as a gift rather than a burden and fosters a sense of contentment that displaces anger. In conclusion, the Stoic path to controlling anger is a lifelong journey, a practice of self-awareness, mindfulness, and intentionality. By applying the principles outlined in this letter, you can gradually transform your relationship with anger, turning it from a destructive force into an opportunity for growth and improvement. The key is to remember that anger is a natural emotion, but it doesn't have to define us. Through patience, empathy, self-discipline, and reflection, we can learn to manage anger in a way that brings peace, wisdom, and harmony to our lives. The journey of self-mastery. One of the most powerful lessons Stoicism teaches us is the journey of self-mastery. Anger is not something that we simply get rid of. It is an emotion that we learn to understand, manage, and eventually transform. Every time we encounter anger, we have the opportunity to practice self-control, reflection, and growth. The Stoics would argue that each challenge we face, including our battles with anger, is a chance to strengthen our character and refine our virtues. Through consistent practice, we develop resilience in the face of life's inevitable frustrations. In moments where anger might have once dominated us, we start to respond with greater clarity and calm. This shift doesn't happen overnight, but with each step, we move closer to becoming individuals who are not controlled by our emotions, but instead act from a place of wisdom and self-discipline. Understand anger as a reflection of values. Stoicism teaches us that our emotions, including anger, are often rooted in our values. When we feel anger rising, it can be a signal that something important to us has been violated. It could be our sense of fairness, respect, or personal integrity. Rather than simply reacting to the feeling of anger, it is helpful to pause and ask, what does this anger reveal about my values? Why is this situation triggering such a strong response? Understanding that our anger often points to something we deeply care about allows us to address the root cause more constructively. For example, if someone disrespects us, our anger may stem from a desire for dignity and respect. Instead of letting anger control our behavior, we can use this insight to address the issue calmly, assertively, and with clarity. In this way, anger becomes a tool for deeper self-awareness and meaningful action. The role of compassion in healing anger. Compassion is a transformative Stoic practice that helps us move beyond anger. Often, we become angry because we feel wronged or misunderstood. But the Stoic practice of compassion teaches us to soften our hearts, not only toward others but also toward ourselves. It helps us see that everyone, including ourselves, makes mistakes and experiences difficulties. When we are compassionate, we can understand that the people who upset us may be acting out of their own pain, fear, or misunderstanding. When we cultivate compassion, we stop viewing others as adversaries or obstacles to our happiness. Instead, we begin to see them as fellow travelers in this imperfect world, all facing their own struggles. This shift in perspective allows us to release resentment and judgment, reducing the power of anger and replacing it with understanding and kindness. Patience as a strength. The Stoics recognize that patience is not a passive virtue but a strength, a powerful tool that allows us to navigate life's challenges without being overwhelmed by them. Anger often arises when we are impatient with the way things are or the way others behave. We want things to go according to our expectations, and when they don't, anger often follows. Learning patience, however, involves trusting the process and accepting that some things take time to unfold. Life doesn't always happen on our timetable, and when we embrace this truth, we learn to let go of the frustration that arises from unmet expectations. Patience gives us the ability to weather difficult situations with grace and poise, reducing our emotional reactivity and fostering inner peace. Accepting imperfection. The Stoics believed in the pursuit of virtue, but they also understood that perfection is not attainable. This awareness allows us to accept ourselves and others with all of our flaws and mistakes. Much of the anger we experience comes from our unrealistic expectations, either of ourselves or others. We expect perfection, and when it doesn't happen, anger arises. However, when we accept the reality that both we and others are imperfect, it becomes easier to manage our reactions. Instead of holding on to anger over every imperfection, we learn to forgive ourselves and others. We understand that mistakes are part of the human experience, and instead of becoming angry over them, we embrace them as opportunities for growth. Find your peace in silence. Another key Stoic practice is silence. In moments of anger, silence can be a powerful tool for regaining composure. Often, our first instinct when anger arises is to speak, whether to defend ourselves, vent our frustrations, or lash out. But the Stoics encourage us to embrace the power of silence. When we feel a surge of anger, rather than responding immediately, we can take a step back and remain silent. This silence creates space for reflection and helps us avoid saying something in the heat of the moment that we might regret later. It also allows us to reframe our thoughts and choose a more measured, thoughtful response. Silence, in this sense, is not weakness. It is a sign of strength, self-control, and emotional intelligence. The Stoic commitment to growth. Lastly, it's important to remember that the Stoic approach to anger is not about eliminating the emotion, but about growing from it. Each time we experience anger, we are presented with an opportunity for self-improvement. The Stoics encourage us to view every emotion as a teacher, and anger is no different. When we encounter anger, we have the choice to act impulsively or reflect deeply. By choosing reflection, we develop our ability to control our emotions and respond from a place of wisdom. Over time, this commitment to growth transforms us into individuals who can face life's challenges with composure, resilience, and a clear mind. In conclusion, managing anger with the wisdom of Stoicism is not an easy task. It requires consistent practice, self-awareness, and a commitment to personal growth. But with each step, we can cultivate greater emotional intelligence, stronger relationships, and a deeper sense of inner peace. As you move forward on your journey, remember that anger is not something to be ashamed of or suppressed. It's a natural part of being human. What matters is how we respond to it. By practicing the Stoic strategies I've shared with you, you can transform anger from a destructive force into an opportunity for growth and understanding. Cultivating the art of detachment. One of the most valuable tools in the Stoic toolbox for managing anger is detachment. Stoicism teaches us to view our emotions from a distance, allowing us to see them without being controlled by them. When anger arises, it's easy to become so absorbed in the emotion that we lose our ability to think clearly. Detachment allows us to step back and view the situation as an observer, rather than a participant. Imagine that someone insults you or causes you frustration. Instead of immediately reacting with anger, try to detach yourself from the situation. Ask yourself, why is this making me feel angry? What's at the root of this feeling? This pause between stimulus and reaction creates a space in which you can regain control of your emotions, and it allows you to respond from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It means that you don't let the emotions of the moment rule your actions. It is a way to reclaim your power in any situation and make a conscious, thoughtful decision about how to respond. The practice of emotional reframing. Another essential Stoic technique is the practice of emotional reframing. This means changing the way we view a situation so that it no longer triggers negative emotions like anger. For example, if someone cuts in front of you in line, rather than interpreting it as an act of rudeness, you could reframe it as an opportunity to practice patience and understanding. Reframing is about changing our internal narrative. Instead of telling ourselves that we've been wronged or treated unfairly, we can change the story we tell ourselves to one of opportunity. The opportunity to grow, practice self-control, or learn something new about ourselves. In this way, we can transform potential sources of anger into moments of personal development. This shift in perspective requires practice, but it can dramatically change the way we experience anger. Instead of reacting to life with frustration, we start to see every situation as an opportunity to embody the Stoic virtues of wisdom, courage, and temperance. The value of being present. The Stoics were champions of living in the present moment. They understood that much of our anger comes from dwelling on the past or worrying about the future. When we replay past events in our minds, we often revisit old wounds, fueling feelings of anger or resentment. Similarly, when we worry about future scenarios, we create anxiety and frustration that may never materialize. The practice of being present allows us to break free from these cycles of negative emotion. By focusing on the here and now, we reduce the power that past experiences or future worries have over our emotional state. When anger arises, we can remind ourselves that it's happening right now, and in this moment, we have the power to choose how we respond. Living in the present is a powerful antidote to anger because it connects us to the reality of the moment instead of getting lost in mental stories or projections. By training ourselves to focus on what's happening right in front of us, we reduce the emotional charge that comes with frustration and anger. Engage in self-compassion. While Stoicism often emphasizes strength and resilience, it also recognizes the importance of compassion, particularly self-compassion. In dealing with anger, we must be kind to ourselves. We are all imperfect human beings, and it's okay to feel anger from time to time. Rather than berating ourselves for feeling angry, we can practice self-compassion by acknowledging that anger is a natural response. When you feel angry, remind yourself that it's okay to experience the emotion. It's what we do with it that matters. Be gentle with yourself and take a moment to understand what triggered the anger. Self-compassion means offering ourselves understanding and forgiveness, just as we would to a friend who is struggling. This kindness toward ourselves helps us release any shame or guilt around anger, and it allows us to move forward with greater clarity and peace. Strengthening emotional intelligence. Anger is not just an isolated feeling. It's a signal that something within us needs attention. One of the most important Stoic practices for managing anger is strengthening our emotional intelligence, the ability to understand and manage our emotions and the emotions of others. Emotional intelligence helps us recognize when anger is building up and gives us the tools to process it healthily. Through emotional intelligence, we can become more aware of our triggers and learn to anticipate when anger may arise. We also become better at recognizing the emotions of others, which helps us navigate difficult situations with empathy rather than defensiveness. By building our emotional intelligence, we not only reduce our own anger, but also improve our relationships and communication with others. The power of acceptance over resistance. Another core Stoic idea is the importance of acceptance over resistance. Many times, anger arises when we resist what is happening in the present moment. We want things to be different than they are. Whether that means a situation turning out differently, someone treating us better, or a specific outcome being achieved. But when we resist reality, we create frustration and anger. Instead of resisting what is, Stoicism teaches us to accept things as they are. This doesn't mean resigning ourselves to injustice or inaction. It means accepting the reality of the situation, no matter how unpleasant, and focusing on what we can control, our response. When we stop fighting against reality, we can more easily find peace and clarity, even in challenging circumstances. Cultivating the virtue of calmness. The Stoics highly valued calmness, as it is a sign of inner strength and self-control. In moments of anger, cultivating calmness means resisting the urge to react impulsively. It involves taking a deep breath, pausing, and choosing to respond thoughtfully rather than allowing anger to dictate our actions. Calmness comes from a deep sense of trust in our ability to handle whatever life throws at us, no matter how difficult it may seem. By regularly practicing calmness, we can make it a habit to stay composed in the face of adversity. This habit of calmness builds our emotional resilience and allows us to respond to anger not with reactivity, but with composure and clarity. As you continue on this journey of managing anger through the Stoic principles, know that this is not a destination, but a continuous process. Every challenge, every interaction, and every emotion is an opportunity to deepen your understanding of yourself and of the Stoic path. The more you practice, the more natural it will become to respond to life's difficulties with patience, wisdom, and tranquility. Remember that anger is a natural part of being human. The goal is not to suppress it, but to understand it, to manage it, and to use it as an opportunity for growth. As you build the strength to control your anger, you'll find that you're not only becoming more in control of your emotions, but also cultivating a more peaceful, purposeful life. Building a resilient mindset. A key component of Stoic practice is developing a resilient mindset, one that enables us to remain calm and composed in the face of adversity. When it comes to anger, resilience is our ability to bounce back from frustrating or upsetting situations without being overwhelmed by them. Stoics believe that adversity is not something to avoid, but something to embrace as an opportunity to grow stronger. By cultivating a resilient mindset, we can approach anger with the belief that we are capable of handling whatever comes our way. Instead of seeing a situation that triggers anger as something that's happening to us, we can shift our perspective and view it as something that's happening for us. It becomes a challenge, a test of our character. With resilience, we can view these tests as opportunities to prove to ourselves that we have the strength and control to rise above our emotions and respond with wisdom and composure. In practicing resilience, we build an emotional foundation that allows us to weather even the most difficult storms with grace and dignity. Every time we face a moment of anger and choose to respond with calmness, we reinforce our emotional resilience, making it easier to handle future challenges. The Stoic ideal of virtue. At the heart of Stoicism lies the idea of virtue, the pursuit of excellence in character. The Stoics believe that by cultivating virtues such as wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, we could achieve true happiness and inner peace. Anger, in this sense, is not simply something to control, but something to be understood in the context of our overall character development. When we are angry, it can be an opportunity to examine which virtues we are lacking at that moment. Are we lacking patience? Are we lacking understanding? Are we lacking empathy? The Stoics teach that these are the moments when we should double down on our commitment to living virtuously. For example, if we find ourselves angry with someone, it's an opportunity to practice justice by understanding their perspective. If we are frustrated by a situation, we can practice wisdom by seeking clarity about what's truly at stake. Every time we face anger, we are called to be more virtuous, to grow in our capacity for patience, understanding, and temperance. By focusing on the cultivation of virtues, anger loses its power to control us, as we are constantly working to become the best versions of ourselves, regardless of external circumstances. The Stoic practice of releasing expectations. Anger often arises from unmet expectations. When life doesn't meet our desires or the way we think things should go, anger can spring up. However, the Stoics encourage us to release these expectations and embrace the unpredictability of life. By learning to expect less from external events and people, we set ourselves free from the cycle of frustration and anger. The Stoic practice of releasing expectations. Anger often arises from unmet expectations. When life doesn't meet our desires or the way we think things should go, anger can spring up. However, the Stoics encourage us to release these expectations and embrace the unpredictability of life. By learning to expect less from external events and people, we set ourselves free from the cycle of frustration and anger. When we let go of expectations, we are no longer attached to specific outcomes, and as a result, we are less likely to be disappointed or angry when things don't go as planned. This doesn't mean we should stop having goals or aspirations. It simply means we should be willing to accept life as it unfolds, knowing that we cannot control everything. Releasing expectations helps us embrace the present moment fully, without frustration or resentment. We learn to focus on what we can control, our reactions, while letting go of the things that lie beyond our influence. Stoic humor as a tool for perspective. One of the more surprising yet valuable tools the Stoics offer is humor. The Stoics understood that life is full of absurdities and that sometimes the best way to deal with anger is to find humor in the situation. When we can laugh at the challenges we face, we gain perspective. Humor helps us see that life is not as serious as we often make it, and it reminds us that we have the power to choose how we interpret the world around us. Humor allows us to step back from the intensity of anger and view situations with lightness and ease. For example, instead of reacting with anger when something goes wrong, try to find something amusing about the situation. Perhaps the mistake is not as catastrophic as it seems, or maybe it's just part of the larger tapestry of life's unpredictability. By finding humor in difficult situations, we remind ourselves that we are not bound by our emotions, but rather, we have the power to shift our mindset and embrace a more peaceful way of being. The role of silence in wisdom. In moments of anger, the Stoics often turn to the power of silence. Silence gives us the space to reflect, to assess the situation, and to choose how to respond. Rather than reacting impulsively with angry words or actions, silence allows us to pause and reflect on our emotions. Sometimes, when we feel anger rising, the wisest course of action is to remain silent. In silence, we allow ourselves the time to regain composure and remind ourselves of the Stoic principles we strive to live by. Silence also protects us from saying something in the heat of the moment that we may regret later. By embracing silence, we give ourselves the gift of time, a precious moment to regain control of our thoughts and emotions. In our fast-paced world, silence can be a powerful antidote to the noise of daily life. It provides clarity, inner peace, and the wisdom to navigate even the most challenging situations with poise. Living with purpose and intention. Finally, one of the most important Stoic strategies for managing anger is living with purpose and intention. When we live with a clear sense of direction, rooted in our values and virtues, we are less likely to be swept away by anger. Anger often arises when we feel disconnected from our purpose or when we feel that others are preventing us from living in alignment with our values. Living with purpose provides us with the clarity we need to navigate challenging situations. It helps us see beyond the immediate frustration or anger and instead focus on the bigger picture, on what truly matters in the long run. By aligning our actions with our purpose, we create a sense of inner harmony that shields us from the turbulence of momentary emotions. When we have a clear sense of purpose, our anger is not in control. We are in control. We can look at every challenge, every frustrating situation, and ask ourselves, does this serve my purpose? How can I respond in a way that aligns with my values? With purpose and intention, we can turn even the most difficult situations into opportunities for growth. As you continue your journey toward mastering anger with Stoic wisdom, remember that this is a lifelong process. The Stoics never promised that managing our emotions would be easy, but they assured us that through consistent practice, reflection, and commitment to growth, we can achieve greater emotional freedom. By applying these Stoic strategies, detachment, emotional reframing, resilience, acceptance, virtue, humor, silence, and purposeful living, you will find that your relationship with anger becomes more manageable and less destructive. Over time, your anger will no longer hold the power to derail you. Instead, it will become a tool for introspection, growth, and emotional strength. May your pursuit of Stoic wisdom guide you to a life of peace, clarity, and inner freedom. And may each step you take bring you closer to becoming the best version of yourself. One that responds to life's challenges not with anger, but with calm, purpose, and unwavering strength.